What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Hands-On channel. Today we're going to talk about the Biden economy. And you want to know how bad it is, how bad the Biden economy is? Well, I can tell you right here from personal experience, Mrs. Hands-On has had to go out and get a second part-time job just so that we can, actually make ends meet and stuff like that. Things are getting so bad that it's getting difficult for us to make ends meet. And for that reason, she's going down and getting a second part-time job, and I'm looking for things that I can do as a side hustle all the time, working on my friends' cars and other things like that. I'm doing everything I can to bring income in, extra income in to our homestead because, we see the writing on the wall. The dollar is losing its value, and it's not doing it by accident. It's doing it because of Biden's policies. It's clear and evident if you have eyes to see and ears to hear. So let's get into some headlines here that prove my point. Biden economy. U.S. credit card debt surpasses $1 trillion for the first time in history. I think that's a pretty big deal. $1 trillion in U.S. credit card debt. I advise you, if you've got any credit cards, pay them off and cut them up. Credit's not real money. Real money is cash in your hand and going down and buying something with that cash. It has value to it. When you have to buy something, let's say that's $5,000. Maybe you're going to go out and buy a used pickup truck for $5,000. And you have to slap that $5,000 out on the barrelhead to pay that person. That feels real. It is real. You're passing out your hard-earned dollars for whatever it is you're trying to buy, right? When you scan that credit card across the little scanner thing, it doesn't feel real anymore. So I advise you, if you want to, have money in the future, get rid of that credit debt and cut up your credit cards. It'd be the best thing you could do. If you can't afford it with cash money, it means you can't afford it. Next up here, Philadelphia pays over $9 million to rioters for injuries incurred in the 2020 George Floyd BLM riots. You remember the Summer of Love where they were burning down cities and stuff like this? Philly is paying $9 million to rioters. Does that make any sense to you? Have you heard of any of the January 6 people who many of them are still locked up in the DC gulag? Have you heard of any of them being paid, any millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars for injuries incurred during the riots, at the Capitol, right? No. They're not paying them anything. They're locking them up and throwing away the key and not giving them due process. But these rioters in Philly, they get $9 million. Is that a good thing? Is that a good thing? I don't think so. It just goes to show that what's good for the goose is not good for the gander in Biden's United States of America. It's all double standards, and I'm sick and tired of it. So I'm going to call it out every time I see it. So next up here, these folks are talking Armageddon, a trifecta of macro imbalances. Charles Payne reacts to shocking economic numbers, and he's absolutely right. I highly encourage you to go watch his video. There was a video clip there, and he's absolutely right. When you look at everything, the inflation, the GDP, the domestic, gross domestic product, how much money do we actually make every year versus how much do we spend every year? It's a severe imbalance, and it's being done intentionally to break the back of the United States of America. Why is that? Because many, many years ago, the UN set their sights on the United States of America, and they said the United States has had far too much for far too long. And the UN was going to help to redistribute that wealth all around the world. See, they don't want to bring everyone else up to the United States level of wealth. What they want to do is tear the United States down to, let's say, a third world country level so that we'll never be able to have any power on the world stage again. They want to remove us from superpower status. And that's what they're doing right now with Biden's help. U.S. Senate Banking Committee to hold hearings on Silicon Valley bank collapse. Oh, yay. Oh, all right. They're going to hold some hearings on that. And I'm not saying they shouldn't, but when's the last time you've ever heard of any of these hearings actually doing any good on anything that they're trying to have these hearings on? Never. These hearings do absolutely nothing. So they're wasting their time, they're wasting their breath, and of course the media, it'll give them something to talk about for a day or two, but whatever. Janet Yellen says bank situation is stabilizing after SVB collapse. So remember, Janet Yellen, she's the one that said this inflation was transitory, meaning it wasn't going to stick around very long. Bullshit. Janet Yellen, every time she opens her mouth, if her lips are moving, she's bullshitting you. You need to know that. She's full of shit. She's a communist, full of shit communist that's got a deep history with the Fed, and It's just unbelievable what we're willing to put up with here in the United States of America. So next up here, we're going to talk about this poll where they must have only asked a bunch of soft-headed liberals the question here, because there's a poll. No sign of populist backlash against Biden after Silicon Valley Bank collapse. So are you kidding me? The bank is collapsing, and his people are unwilling to even look at it. And so they're like, oh, no, Biden's just fine. In fact, I've been watching a lot of these man on the street videos, and I can't remember the guy's name, but there's a guy here on YouTube that does these man on the street interviews all the time. And he's always out in like Long Beach, California, and places like that, whatever, on the beach, right? And I can't remember the name of that beach. Venice Beach is one of the places I've seen him at. And he goes out and he asks these random people, you know, questions about different things. What do they think about Trump? What do they think about Biden? On and on and on. And it's amazing how many people he'll come into contact with that are just flat out communist. They're like, yeah, ban the Second Amendment. It's terrible. It's bad. Shut these MAGA people up. They don't have a right to free speech. I mean, these people are cutting the wrists of the United States of America, our system of liberty and freedom. They don't give a shit about it because they haven't ever learned about it, and they don't think it means anything. They think it's just a bunch of talk or whatever and doesn't mean anything. My liberty shall not be infringed any more than my Second Amendment rights. No, thank you. It's a God-given right, okay? It's not something the government can even give you. It's God-given. They're only enumerated in the Bill of Rights to bolster up our resolve, so that we will not put up with any of this crap when these fucking communists are coming to take our rights away from us. Next up here. Sorry. I don't like to drop F-bombs when I'm making videos and stuff, but this stuff has got me so pissed off that I can't do it without dropping F-bombs, because these people are fucking communists. Next up, Biden's climate change zealotry contributed to Silicon Valley Bank collapse, Republican AG's charge. And they're absolutely right. The reason these banks are collapsing, it's not only Biden's climate change zealotry, it's their own social issues. You know, I heard this Silicon Valley Bank got rid of their head honcho that was supposed to like oversee the investments in the bank. And I don't know if they fired him or if the guy just resigned or whatever, but they didn't replace the guy. Instead, they brought in a LGBTQ lesbian representative to come out and basically have a whole month of like lesbian news, or I don't know what the hell they call it, like Lesbian Women's Month or something like that. I don't know. But these people were super woke at SBV Bank. That's part of the reason they failed. Here's the $10 million question. Is your money safe in banks? More depositors are wondering after SVB collapse. And I would argue, no, it's not safe. It's certainly not as safe as it was a few years ago when Donald Trump was president of the United States and the economy was doing well. It was doing great. It was the best economy that I've seen since the 90s. And I got to give the credit where the credit's due. Under Bill Clinton back in the 90s, the economy was booming. Now, I don't think it was because of Bill Clinton necessarily anything he was doing. It was just because of all the technological advancements we were having back then with computers and stuff like that, and Silicon Valley was building up and stuff like this, right? So there was a lot of this money being created in cyberspace. So it put a lot of money into the economy. Therefore, Bill Clinton's term, the economy looked real good. Anyway, next up. Close to 190 banks could face Silicon Valley Bank's fate, according to a new study. So it's not just SVB, it's 190 other banks. Is your bank one of those banks? Might be a good time to get into some silver and gold if you can afford it and find it. That's the problem. Demand for physical precious metals skyrockets as central banks buy everything in sight. The writing is on the wall, guys. China's buying up the gold. Russia's buying up the gold. All the foreign countries, probably Iran as well, is buying up the gold. They're divesting from petrodollars. You know, the world currency reserve, whatever. That's over now, thanks to Joe Biden and his communist policies that have pushed us over the cliff. So, guys, this is what I've been talking about for a long time, that you better prepare because the economy and everything else associated with it is going to collapse. And we could be thrust into a civil war on top of World War III. Why would they do all this stuff? Why would they have all of these perfect storms converging together at once like this unless they're trying to collapse everything? That's what I believe this is. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence are powerful documents. They're powerful ideals that most Americans, at least of my generation, were raised believing in. The younger generation doesn't believe in these ideals at all. They believe in socialism, communism, whatever, Marxism, whatever you want to say. They believe in that. Money for nothing. That's what they believe in. Of course, what they don't realize is when the commies do come in and take over, the first ones they line up against the wall and execute are the traitors to their own country. Because why would you want to have traitors in your ranks? You wouldn't. You wouldn't. So the first people they execute are the traitors against the previous country that they're conquering, right? So in this case, it'd be the United States of America. So these liberals that think they're going to get some cush job or something working for their commie buddies because they've been promoting communism for all these years are actually the first ones going to get the bullet. So anyway, guys, you might want to stock up on things that are more valuable than dollar bills. And, you know, my wife and I were talking about it the other day. They're really not good for lighting your wood stove. They're not good for wiping your ass. They're not good for anything. There is no intrinsic value in a paper dollar. None. Other than what value we put on it. Our confidence is what keeps the dollar, and the world's confidence is what keeps the dollar a powerful currency at the moment. All of that could come crashing down. And me and other people that I talk to believe that they're doing this intentionally to destroy the value of the dollar. Why would they do that? So they can roll out a CBDC, central bank digital currency. Easier to control, easier to track and monitor everyone. And I heard someone speculating the other day, I think it was Glenn Beck, he was saying that when they do it, they're not just going to say, dollar for dollar, we're going to trade you CBDC for your dollar bills. No. What they're going to do is they're going to offer you, like, say, 50% more value than your paper money is worth. So they'll say, okay, we'll give you one CBDC coin or token or whatever it's going to be called, and that'll be worth $1.50 for every dollar you exchange. And they will make it to where it'll seem profitable to you to go out and transfer your dollar bills in for this CDBC money, right? And when they do that, now they've got you. Once they got enough people, it doesn't even take everyone. Some people are going to cling on to their dollars until the day they die, right? They're going to have them buried in mason jars and stuff like that. They're not going to trade them in, no matter how enticing the deal is for the CBDC coin. They're not going to do it. It doesn't matter. Enough people, when let's say it's 70 or 80%, sort of like the vaccination thing, right? Remember when they said 77 some odd percent of people had been vaccinated here in the United States of America? And it's sort of like that. Once enough people have it, they don't have to get the rest. They don't need to get the rest. If you're no longer allowed to spend your U.S. tender, your legal tender at the store because they no longer recognize it and they only recognize digital currency, then you'll just be shit out of luck with your paper dollars there, won't you? So what am I telling you to do? What am I doing? Well, I'm looking real heavy into buying a lot more silver. I'd like to buy some gold, but gold is skyrocketing. It's, I think, over $2,000 an ounce now. So that kind of prices a lot of us out of the gold market. But you don't have to buy it by the ounce. You can buy smaller, portions or whatever, grams of gold if you want to go that direction. I think silver is a better currency. I was actually just talking to a friend of ours, a family friend, over the weekend, and I'm in agreement with him. He was saying that the silver, think of the silver as more like a $20 bill. And the gold is more like, hundreds or $1,000 bills, right? I mean, depending on what size weight you have of gold. But I really like that philosophy, and so I'm going to start stacking up silver in my own house, in my safe, or maybe I'll bury it in my backyard or something like that. I'll find a place to keep it secure outside of a bank. I want real silver too. I don't want silver certificates or gold certificates. I want that shit in my hand so that when it all comes crashing down, I'll still have some way to maintain value of my whatever currency, I guess we'll call it. It ain't really the currency anymore because the currency's going to hell in a handbasket. So anyway, guys, that's what I'm working on. The other thing I'm doing is I'm buying anything tangible that I know I will need and use in the future. I'm trying to buy that now rather than holding on to cash and dollar bills that may be worthless in a short time. They'll certainly be worth less. Whether or not they're completely worthless or not remains to be seen, but I think it's very, very likely. So guys, let me know what you guys are stocking up on. Another precious metal I highly suggest you stock up on, lead. I hope you get the message of what I'm trying to say here. Lead. I'll just say it. Bullets. Lots of bullets. You're going to need them. You're going to need them, especially if it breaks out into civil war over this or the arrest of Donald J. Trump. You take your pick. The country is going to hell in a handbasket. I wish I had a more descriptive way to describe what's going on here, but that's it. That's the best one I can come up with. It's all going to hell by design. All part of the 45 communist goals. All part of the stuff Yuri Bezmenov talked about years ago. Destabilization, demoralization of the United States of America, and then they're going to conquer us. That's what it's always been about. That's what it's about today. That's what it was about 50 years ago when they started this whole thing. Joseph McCarthy was absolutely right. There were a lot more communists infiltrating our system than we thought. Now, maybe his methods weren't the most sound. He should have done other things and maybe done a little more investigation before just going and rounding people up. But at the same time, McCarthy was stopped from rounding up the communists. Why is that? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Why didn't they let McCarthy go? I mean, he was assigned to do this task, and then they pulled back on his leash. Why did they do that? And there's a lot of speculation that he didn't actually die from drinking himself to death, that actually something happened, like the CIA or whatever they were called at the time went in there to his room and, pumped something in the needle that either gave him a heart attack or made him die suddenly. And I don't know. I don't want to speculate on all that. We're at the end of the video here. But Joseph McCarthy was absolutely right. The communists had infiltrated our system way back then. And one of the viewers about 3 years ago, I guess now, told me about a book that I'd never read. And I highly recommend you go read it. It's called None Dare Call It Treason. Go read it. It's a real page turner. It'll tell you everything you need to know about when the United States of America started adopting all this communist philosophy. And not out in the open. They did it behind the scenes. They did it, in a shadowy sort of way so people wouldn't pick up on what they were actually doing. But it has been happening since the 40s or the 50s. And probably, to be honest with you, probably all the way back since the early 1900s before the creation of the Federal Reserve, which our founding fathers were dead set against, a centralized banking system. So anyway, guys, I've gone on long enough. Let me know what you guys are thinking about, what you're worrying about. What are you stocking up on to get ahead of this collapse that's imminent now? So I appreciate you tuning in. As always, I stand for liberty to the bitter end. And that end is coming rapidly. So I suggest you get your shit together. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Until then, we'll see you next time.